Why are you here? This isn't the place for a gathering like yours." The words cut through the air as if slicing through the delicate peace of a serene morning. Elliot Brooks, the young groom standing amidst the wedding arrangements in Riverside Park, looked up with a calm yet steady gaze. He was used to such confrontations, a veteran of unspoken battles fought daily in the most banal of settings. Yet here, in the very park where he had chosen to tie his destiny with laurel under the open sky, the sting felt more acute. Elliot had selected this park for its sweeping views of the river and its lush green landscapes, thinking it would mirror the vibrant blend of cultures he cherished in his own life. He had meticulously planned the event, obtained every necessary permit, ensured every I was dotted and every T crossed, but none of this seemed to matter to the determined figure now storming across the park, lips pursed and eyes narrowed. The woman approaching was middle-aged, wearing a resolute expression akin to a soldier heading into battle. She was Margaret Karen Thompson, known in the neighborhood for her relentless grip on what she deemed right and wrong. She questioned his presence, her voice climbing a few octaves as she demanded an explanation, a reason, an apology for a transgression known only to her. "Where are you from? Have you ever been judged based on your appearance before you even spoke a word? If you believe discrimination has no place in the world, hit that subscribe button and share this story." Without waiting for an answer, Karen pulled out her phone, tapping 911 with a righteousness suggesting she was performing a civic duty. She claimed there were unwanted visitors and potential disturbances in the area, disregarding Elliot's attempts to explain, his words vanishing into the void of her presumptions. Elliot remained poised, his demeanor unflappable despite the rising tide of frustration among the gathered guests and vendors. A lifelong composure soothed him, the armor of dignity built over years of facing whispered assumptions and blatant biases was firmly in place. After all, what was another day of prejudice, another instant judgment? But this day was supposed to be different. This day mattered in ways so deeply personal. His bride, Laurel, stood beside him, her hand steady and warm in his, her eyes filled with love and silent support, mirroring his quiet strength. As the sirens wailed closer, Elliot knew, their wedding day, a day meant for unity and celebration, was being twisted into something ominous, a bitter chapter in their story. Police officers arrived, uniforms crisp, faces unreadable. Their approach was cautious, charged with an air of misplaced authority, enhanced by Karen's exaggerated account. Elliot felt the pressure mounting as they requested IDs and permits, scrutinizing the documentation with a skepticism absent when his name and accompanying title were yet unknown. As Karen hovered, emboldened by the presence of law enforcement, a handful of neighbors meandered over, some curiously, others in silent agreement with Karen's unspoken belief that the presence of such a gathering dared to challenge the presumed order of things. And then there were those who watched, still and observant, uncertain of their role in the unfolding scene. Elliot's best man discreetly instructed the wedding planner to capture everything on camera, understanding the power of a recorded moment, an undisputed ally in a world drunk on visual storytelling. Guests began exchanging knowing glances, experience etched into their features from lives lived under the critical gaze of those who saw them as less. Beneath the surface, whispered conversations flickered like intermittent flames among the guests. Memories of indignities faced, injustices weathered, and the shared understanding of being perennial outsiders in places where they always had to prove their right to belong. Elliot looked around at the elaborate wedding setup, at the flowers that heralded hope, the chairs anticipating joyous witnesses, and the aisle that beckoned him toward a future, intertwined with laurel. He realized painfully how discrimination sought to transform beauty into a battleground, casting shadows on a day of light. Yet even as uncertainty tinged the air, a fierce resolve anchored in Elliot's heart. He had a line of defense not rooted in power, wealth, or status, but in integrity and truth. He knew that the reality of who he was, a successful entrepreneur and beloved community figure, would eventually dismantle the ill-conceived judgments rained upon him. As he held Laurel's gaze, he felt an unswerving commitment ripple through their bond. Love resisted hatred, and the dignity of self-worth defied any attempt to tarnish it. As the narrative teetered between conflict and resolution, Elliot found himself at a precipice. To confront or endure, to challenge or concede. In this moment, crafted less by choice and more by courage, The quiet power within him stirred, ready to rewrite the story told time and again. The park would be not a site of judgment, but one of ultimate celebration, reclaiming joy and justice in equal measure. The situation in Riverside Park began to shift under the weight of assumptions and quiet tensions as Elliot Brooks stood firm in the face of scrutiny. The police officers, their badges glinting under the sun, seemed to grow, more composed as they sifted through Elliot's meticulously organized documentation. But still, there was caution in their actions, a residue of doubt fueled by Karen Thompson's insistent claims. Karen stood off to one side, her phone poised to capture anything that supported her narrative of disruption. Her presence was like a match threatening to set the kindling of misunderstanding ablaze. The rise of her indignation had not yet found its counterbalance, and her voice retained an edge of impatience, each sentence a reminder of the thinly veiled biases that festered beneath the park's picturesque surface. Around Elliot, ripples of unease began to spread through the assembled guests, each person acutely aware of the precariousness of their situation. Laurel, ever beside Elliot, anchored him with silent reassurance. Her confidence in him was unwavering, yet an undercurrent of anxiety flowed just beneath her serene exterior. The stage was set for celebration, yet all felt the weight of a collective sigh held in check. With every exchanged word and gesture, some police officers measured Elliot's calm demeanor against Karen's fervent accusations. One officer, seemingly more open than the rest, tapped into a deeper well of empathy, questioning the purpose of doubt in the face of such clear documentation. Yet the reality of how easily misconceptions could seed division was evident in the tentative dance between truth and assumption. Elliot's intuition told him that he was fighting more than just this one battle. It was a scene repeated countless times in countless places, where backgrounds influenced perceptions more than actualities. He understood the pattern, a glimpse, an unfounded suspicion, and the immediate leap from presumption to enforcement. Sometimes those who wield authority are unaware of the narrative they extend, unaware of the deeper implications of their quick judgments. Meanwhile, the gathering neighbors watched with varying degrees of involvement. Some hovered on the fringes, looking uneasily from the police to Elliot, their thoughts veiled behind polite expressions. Others showed quiet support, standing a bit closer to signal their lack of agreement with Karen's actions. Yet their silence in the face of her loud allegations remained a complicity that Elliot, against every fiber of his patience, struggled to tolerate. As the footage of Karen's confrontation found its way to the broader digital world, the scene in the park took on a life beyond the immediate. Smartphones captured glints of sunlight off the lake, the restless shuffle of guests, and the poised readiness of cameras clicked into record mode. Wedding While Black quickly ignited across platforms, drawing the court of public opinion into its folds. The virality of the images and stories began to spread, planting seeds of judgment far beyond the park's borders. In the midst of escalating whispers and recording devices, Elliot found himself grounded in a determination that characterized the deeply rooted fortitude of his ancestry. The collective memories of generations who had faced challenges yet remained unbroken fueled his resolve. He was bound by a lineage of quiet power, finding strength in the dignity of those who had walked similar paths before him. Every step Elliot took, every word he spoke, was deliberate, meant to highlight the absurdity of the ongoing drama. He shared his permit once more, described calmly his intent and preparedness, and gently reminded the officers of their own protocols. These acts of measured response established a sense of simmering empowerment, beckoning the world to see beyond a single defining today. Karen's fervor flared briefly, her indignation casting a final pebble of discontent before others started stepping away. A neighbor, Rachel, spoke up softly, her voice bridging the divide, suggesting an allyship that Karen's version of reality couldn't sustain. Elliot's background in business, in navigating around obstacles with strategic patience, translated seamlessly into this personal battlefield. As the tide of the confrontation shifted subtly, the park still held its breath. The air, although heavy, absorbed the tremor of unwarranted fear and approached a fragile strand of peace. Yet amidst the clouds of doubt that had lingered all morning, Elliot felt early hints of clarity peeking through, like sunlight promising to break a storm. Laurel's hand went to Elliot's arm, and in sharing that small touch, they reaffirmed their promise to each other. A vow unscripted yet solid, to love and to resist, to endure and overcome, in a world often eager to define them by anything other than the truth of who they were. Ultimately, what both Elliot and Laurel learned that day was the enduring reality of influence, how their presence and action reframed narratives, and how the honesty of moments shared could resonate beyond themselves. They felt the universe beginning to conspire to turn an experience of discrimination into one of hope, engagement, and change. And as their wedding guests slowly resumed seats, those immense wheels of transformation began to turn. As the morning sun continued its ascent, the scene in Riverside Park was a tableau of quiet yet potent tension. Around Elliot Brooks, the gathered guests and bystanders became an unwilling audience to a drama that spoke volumes about society's unwritten rules. This unexpected turn of events at a joyous occasion unfolded with layers of complexity as social media streams turned the park into a microcosm of broader issues. In this unfolding vigil, each person present became a part of the narrative, whether by intent or by silence. The guests, dressed in their finest for Elliot and Laurel's union, now found themselves actors in a play neither scripted nor previewed. Their smiles, meant for celebration, now twitched with the uncertainty of the unexpected spotlight cast upon them. There was an undeniable energy, as if the charged air from the collective breaths held the potential to sway the outcome of what was transpiring. Cameras captured the disparity between what should have been and what was. Live-streamed videos paired the elegance of floral arrangements and satin dresses against the stark incongruity of tension and suspicion. Despite their heartbreak over the marred day, guests rallied around Elliot and Laurel, their solidarity a quiet chorus defying the discordant note of discrimination. Relatives and friends exchanged knowing looks, shoring up resolve from an unspoken well of shared experiences, each understanding that this moment was bigger than themselves, echoing fights for dignity waged time and again. Throughout, the role of each observer solidified. Some took to various social networks to voice their outrage and disbelief, the hashtags gaining momentum as more people tuned in. The unexpected allies from the local community began to emerge, their presence a subtle yet sturdy counterweight to Karen Thompson's divisive intrusion. As Karen continued to hover on the periphery, her sense of justification wavered slightly. The ripple effects of her actions were mostly unintended, and as the online storm she inadvertently ignited gathered force, even she began to realize the gravity of her misstep. She shifted nervously, sensing herself standing on a social fault line created by her own hands. For the officers, the roles they embodied twisted under the dual pressures of the immediate and the media-frenzied spotlight now turned toward them. The realization dawned that their decisions, every move and implication, would be dissected far beyond this park. Each of their interactions was now a stitch in the ongoing societal fabric, weaving narratives often defined by choice and chance. In this cauldron of observation, the voices that rose did so in myriad ways. Some were loud and insistent, their tone a clarion call for justice. Others, soft and persistent, wove empathy into the weave of understanding. And then there were the silent voices, those whose mere presence spoke the language of unyielding resilience. Together, they created a tapestry rich in diversity, crying out for compassion and change. Elliot continued to act with profound composure, his strength offering a beacon for others to look toward. The clarity of his actions began painting an irrefutable portrait of resilience. The strength of his response struck a chord rippling outwards from the park to digital screens where audiences watched with bated breath, captivated by a journey of dignity. This viral storytelling reached beyond, transforming an incident of prejudice into a testament to perseverance. Those tuning into the digital narrative found their own stories mirrored in Elliot's steadfast approach. The air was saturated with a renewed commitment to confront the biases that stain the fabric of everyday life. Guests remained vigilant, yet slowly allowed the atmosphere to shift back towards the celebration they'd convened for. Music faintly hummed back to life, a tentative reminder of joy. Conversations that resumed were marked by a blend of stoic understanding and determined celebration. As the sun reached its zenith, casting warm light over the scene, Laurel slipped her arm through Elliot's. Her gaze spoke volumes of intertwined commitment and love that remained unshakable. the unsaid strengthening their shared resolve. With every interaction, the promise of their future became an undeniable reality, eclipsing the discord that had sought to overshadow it. Meanwhile, the videographer discreetly captured the most poignant elements of the unfolding event. His lens caught glimpses of eloquent emotion, stills of unity, and the compelling visuals of what became an indelible story. This day would go down in memory not as a lapse overshadowed by conflict, but as an embodiment of both incident and response, resilience and movement toward change. As that narrative unfolded, both physically in the park and virtually online, the deeper meaning of the day's events began to crystallize. The whispers of the past, amplified now by a community refusing to stand down, promised a shift in visibility for the interconnected fights against prejudice. Here, while unexpected, was born a new chapter of awareness and change, epitomized by a commitment to transformation and unified in the push against bias. In the end, the presence of the crowd, those physically there and those digitally participating, transformed the isolated into the integrated. The onlookers, observers, supporters, and resistors became a single force, consciously knit together by this shared experience. And through it all, Elliot and Laurel emerged resilient, embodying the triumph of love, perseverance, and the power to write one's narrative in the face of adversity. In the midst of the tense standoff in Riverside Park, a subtle yet profound shift began to occur. Elliot Brooks, who had conducted himself with unwavering poise, now took a gentle yet decisive step forward in reclaiming the narrative of his wedding day. The atmosphere, thick with the weight of presumption, began to relent its hold as a different kind of power emerged, not through force or loud rhetoric, but through quiet, undeniable truth. Elliot had been underestimated in those initial minutes. He stood not just as a groom, but as a man of influence and means. While he wore his humility effortlessly, the depths of his achievements were substantial and unequivocal. With each beat of his heart, he channeled the resilience of countless forebears who had walked similar paths, bridging generations with acts of quiet defiance. Amidst the lingering suspicion, his resolve was ironclad. He approached one of the sergeants, his demeanor respectful but resolute. A measured clarity infused his words as he mentioned the specific legal procedures in question, asking whether these had been duly followed. The words, while simple, carried the weight of someone who not only knew the law, but lived the principles it was meant to protect. In handing over his business card to the officer, Elliot inadvertently revealed the vastness of his world, a world where he held sway as the founder and CEO of a burgeoning tech empire. His credentials were beyond reproach, his achievements a testament to his intellect and dedication. The card bore his name and title with an understated elegance, symbols of the power he wielded in spheres most could only dream of entering. The officer, upon realizing the full extent of Elliot's identity, felt the universe of his own missteps expand before him. It was a moment laced with irony and perhaps shame, highlighting the peril of surface judgments. Here stood a man whose innovations contributed to societal progress, whose leadership was lauded, and whose philanthropy uplifted communities. For Elliot, this was not a matter of wielding his influence to instill fear, but rather seeking to insist upon dignity and fairness that should have been unquestionable from the start. Each word he spoke carried the legacy and validation that he deserved, not just as a powerful figure, but as a human being. Elliot's quiet declaration of identity effectively rebalanced the dynamics of the now altered engagement. By now, some officers began recalibrating their approach, awareness replacing wariness. Their postures softened as they processed not just the facts presented, but the nuanced implications of their early assumptions. It was a sobering realization of how close they had come to reducing a significant personal celebration to a series of misunderstandings and stereotypes. Karen Thompson, too, felt the tremors of her ill-fated attempt to disrupt what she erroneously perceived as a threat. Her previously confident stance fractured into one of visible discomfort, faced with the real-time consequences of her actions laid bare. Pride swelled momentarily in Elliot's supporters as they watched our sense of entitlement unravel under the weight of unfolding truths. As Elliot stood rooted in dignity, the latent energy shimmering in the park shifted toward healing. An unspoken understanding swept through those present, erasing the doubt that initially clouded perceptions. He embodied the empathetic resilience to educate rather than retaliate, steering the event back to its rightful place as a ceremony of unity and love. The guests watching this transformation felt a wave of relief mingled with respect for Elliot's composed reclaiming of narrative. The police, now acknowledging their consequence-ridden error, began to step back, allowing the intent of the day to finally take precedence over fractured perceptions. As electronic notifications buzzed incessantly, alerting the broader digital realm to these developments, the dialogue sparked by this event resonated far and wide. The story was not just about the injustice of a single day, but also the broader, continuous dialogues about how societies grapple with bias, progress, and inclusion. The tangible metamorphosis within the park became emblematic of a larger societal acknowledgement, a compelling depiction of the need to address presumptions and recalibrate actions to equity and fairness. Elliot's stance was a call to consciousness, an invitation to engage in discussions that challenge and dismantle long-held biases. So, as the essence of his shared reality settled into the hearts of those present, the measures of dignity and quiet influence Elliot wielded became a beacon, lighting a pathway through prejudice to possibility. With each unfolding moment, the park, once thick with tension, was transformed into a canvas for hope, illustrating the power inherent in resolving discrimination with grace and intellect. In the aftermath, Elliot and Laurel stood at the cusp of their intended journey, a union now even more symbolic for what it represented. The guests, enveloped in the restored harmony, embraced the couple's courage, and in that embrace was the collective assertion that love was, and always will be, the ultimate defiance against adversity. As an aura of peace enveloped the once disrupted celebration, it marked the transition of a memory, one meant to chronicle not only a day of love, but also a victory of awareness, solidarity, and the profound strength found in standing firmly in one's truth. As the revelations unfolded, the air in Riverside Park began to change. There was a distinct energy shift, a collective breath held, and then released as realization settled over the gathering. Elliot Brooks wasn't just a groom trying to defend the sanctity of his wedding day. He was a visionary, a leader whose intellect and achievements had left indelible marks on the world. The low hum of murmurs spread through the gathering like a ripple in a pond, carrying with it a mix of surprise, respect, and introspection. For a moment, everything seemed suspended in a unique equilibrium where past narratives and present realities collided. Elliot stood, not as one triumphant over the prejudices cast upon him, but as a pillar of conscious strength willing to stand in the truth of his identity. This wasn't about flaunting power or prestige. It was the revelation of a deeper story, one that underscored the dignity he maintained amidst the storm. Karen Thompson, up to this point a catalyst of conflict, felt her confidence fracture like a vase dropped from a height. The reality of her assumptions were laid bare, bricks in the edifice of biased presumption that had long supported her worldview. Faced with the undeniable truth of Elliot's prominence and integrity, her ill-informed actions echoed loudly as regrets in her mind, each note a stark reminder of her precipitous misjudgment. The officers, too, were navigating their own reconciliation with what had transpired. Their initial engagement, rooted in suspicion, gave way to a complex acknowledgement of the power dynamics that had been counterintuitively reversed. Elliot's position forced them to confront a sobering truth about the swift judgments that had nearly overshadowed a day meant for celebration. Even as Elliot's influence and status gradually surfaced, he chose the path of enlightenment over retribution, making it clear through his actions that the deeper battles were about changing perspectives, not punishing individuals. His emotional intelligence painted a compelling portrait of leadership, one invested in cultivating understanding over perpetuating division. Elliot's stance ignited an inner dialogue among the guests and onlookers, prompting self-reflection on how each individual perceives and reacts to the world. The ripples extended well beyond the picturesque boundaries of the park into every corner of the digital world where the story spread like wildfire. The hashtag #OshStandWithElliot emerged, encapsulating not just a singular event, but a movement toward broader awareness and consciousness regarding racial biases. Within the online sphere, spectators who knew little of Elliot's world became allies in his narrative, Celebrities, influencers, and everyday people were drawn into the unfolding story as resonant voices added weight to the call for change and justice. Comments and retweets draped like a digital embrace around Elliot and Laurel, each interaction in the virtual realm further weaving the fabric of solidarity. Elliot's colleagues and partners in the business world watched from afar, their initial disbelief replaced with loyal support and pride in his unshakable character. With each passing moment, the actions of a few were met with the chorus of many, amplifying the resolution held by Elliot to guide this tumultuous experience toward transformative change. The spotlight on Elliot also unearthed stories from others in attendance, each with their own accounts of resilience in the face of misjudgment. These narratives formed a cascade, linking past, present, and future in an ongoing dialogue about overcoming adversity with courage. With every story shared, the flimsy veil that often obscures systemic bias became more transparent, offering glimpses of the possibility for progress. Karen, watching empowerment fostered by her mistaken incitement, wrestled with the internal echo of her mistake. Her regret spurred a journey inward, prompting questions about her assumptions and how to dismantle them. It became clear that her role was shifting from one of antagonist to student, learning through the consequences of her actions. By now, the wedding guests, once apprehensive, stood tall, their alignment with Elliot's message a testament to the enduring power of community. The crowd around them became more than just witnesses, they were guardians of a new, evolving dialogue about dignity and respect that beckoned everyone to listen deeper and act wiser. Laurel, eternally steadfast beside Elliot, traced her fingers against his palm, a silent acknowledgement of the unyielding unity that had ride them through this unforeseen trial. Their bond, rooted in love and steeled by adversity, reflected an unwavering light upon the proceedings. As sunset draped its golden hues over the park, a collective embrace of hope wrapped itself around the moment. What had begun as an instance of unfounded judgment transformed into a testament of resilience and transformative potential. Elliot and Laurel's wedding became a clarion call for all present to carry forth echoes of understanding long after they departed. This day, dormant with expectation and anticipation, had emerged not only as a celebration of love, but also as a tangible reminder that real change begins with standing in the truth of one's values and inviting others to do the same. With grace and resolve, Elliot pivoted adversities into avenues for awareness, ushering in a future where understanding reigned and assumptions no longer dictated reality. The sun met the horizon, tucking the day's trials under its brim, but the legacy of lessons learned in Riverside Park stood firm and prepared to journey alongside all who were present. As Elliot and Laurel stepped forward, they bore symbols not just of their marriage, but of a renewed commitment among themselves and their community. A commitment to foster change, nurture understanding, and to always remember that love and justice are most powerful when forged together. In the days that followed the wedding at Riverside Park, the atmosphere buzzed with the impact of the events that had transpired. Elliot Brooks had always understood that change was often sparked by moments of confrontation, and this incident, however unintended, had ignited a fierce call for accountability and transformation. As the digital world continued to dissect and discuss, a tangible momentum built in the real world. The story of that day had transcended its immediate setting to challenge institutions and communities to reflect on their practices and beliefs. What had begun as a singular moment of injustice was now unfolding into a broader quest for reform, steered by the resilience and leadership that Elliot had exemplified. Immediately following the revelations at the park, formal apologies came first from the local authorities, an acknowledgement of the missteps that had framed the day timely and important. These acknowledgments were not mere gestures of placation, but steps toward a commitment to improve processes and prevent similar occurrences. The gravity of the oversight urged a reevaluation of procedures, prompting civic bodies to examine the latent biases within their ranks and policies. The police department, under public pressure and introspection, announced a series of measures aimed at preventing racial discrimination from underpinning their actions. Training programs focusing on bias awareness and cultural sensitivity were scheduled, meant to arm officers with greater empathy and understanding. This training, Marcus knew, was only the beginning, but a necessary pivot toward lasting change. Beyond the local impact, Elliot's presence in the tech industry brought him numerous opportunities to leverage his influence for systemic improvements. Invited to speaking engagements and roundtable discussions globally, Elliot became a voice advocating not just for industry innovation, but for inclusive practices that dismantle the barriers of prejudice that often find roots in corporate and professional ecosystems. With cyber visibility rendering traditional boundaries obsolete, companies eager to align with the emergent narrative sought Elliot's guidance on transforming not just the functional aspects of diversity, but the cultural attitudes that often hinder true equity. In boardrooms and executive retreats, Elliot shared insights drawn from personal experience, urging leaders to foster environments where diverse talents could thrive without the weight of unnecessary bias. Karen Thompson, faced with the ramifications of her actions, embarked on a personal journey of growth and understanding. Throughout their unexpected interaction, Elliot had unknowingly become a catalyst for her own transformation. The incident prompted reflection, ushering her onto paths of forgiveness and enlightenment. Determined to make amends, Karen joined alliances focused on educating communities about prejudice and bias, realizing that her actions could, in fact, pivot toward positive outcomes when paired with humble contemplation. Elliot, alongside his wife Laurel, sought ways to channel the momentum of transformation into tangible benefits for their communities. Together, they established the Riverside Foundation for Equity, an organization dedicated to providing resources and support for underrepresented groups. The foundation aimed to create opportunities in education while fostering dialogues that bridge communities and nurture understanding. Under the foundation's umbrella, a scholarship fund was initiated to support young leaders passionate about social justice, transparency, and innovation. It sought to empower those eager to advocate for change, providing tools and platforms for the next generation to continue pushing boundaries further, ensuring that Elliot and Laurel's vines of vision continued to intertwine in positive impact. The couple's resolve to effect change also saw them engaging with politicians and policymakers, advocating for legislative reforms at local and national levels. Their involvement in parliamentary committees advocating against racial profiling and inequity became an exemplar of the direction marginalized narratives could take when charged with determination and empowered voices. The story of that day, Ella realized, had evolved into something much larger, a tapestry of advocacy woven with threads of response, resilience, and reformation. It stood as a testament to the potential of turning indignation into a force for good. Around the world, people who had followed the story felt motivated to question their own roles within their spaces, examining how their actions could contribute to change. With the benefit of hindsight, Elliot and Laurel understood that this transformative journey was more marathons than sprint, a protracted endeavor requiring perseverance and the collective commitment of like-minded individuals. They remained steadfast, finding strength in the networks that emerged in the wake of that fateful day, and strengthened by knowing that they were not alone in this pursuit. As days turned to months and the echoes of their shared experience continued to reverberate, Elliot and Laurel honored their commitment to justice and love, aware that each small step taken sowed seeds of positivity and inclusion. Bound together by a common purpose, they endeavored to cultivate fields fertile with progress, ready for future fields of equity to bloom. In time, the day at Riverside Park became a story told time and again, not as an account of discord, but as a testament to resilience and reform. It was retold in classrooms and seminars, its message carried forward in the words and deeds of those who embodied the values it symbolized, a story that transformed individual pain into collective gain, sparking dialogues that transcended prejudices and inspired an ever-growing commitment to a world where dignity and justice would forever be intertwined. As the days turned into weeks following the tumultuous events at Riverside Park, the momentum for change that had been ignited refused to diminish. Instead, it unfurled steadily, engulfing institutions and communities in a movement that demanded a reevaluation of established norms grounded in prejudice and bias. The ripples of that single day had expanded into waves carrying voices of transformation across the broader canvas of society. The Riverside Foundation for Equity, born from Elliot and Laurel's resolve, became a beacon for systemic reform. It wasn't merely an organization, but a catalyst, sparking necessary conversations, building bridges among disparate communities, and creating opportunities for tangible, long-term impacts. Schools, eager to be at the forefront of this societal shift, began integrating lessons that highlighted diversity and inclusion not as afterthoughts but as foundational pillars. Guided by the Foundation's framework, teachers designed curriculums fostering critical thinking about race, identity, and justice. Students learned about the complex history of social inequalities, empowered to question and dismantle the biases that often shadowed their realities. Within these classrooms, a new generation equipped with empathy and insight stood ready to forge a more equitable world. Elliot and Laurel, continuously inspired by the potential of youth, invested in mentorship programs connecting young leaders with professionals across various industries. The dialogue between generations broke barriers, inviting innovation and reinforcing the idea that societal advancement required both the wisdom of history and the energy of progress. Beyond academia, the corporate world responded to the clarion call for reform with an earnest reevaluation of their internal cultures. Driven by Elliot's visible leadership, companies sought to cultivate work environments that genuinely represented the diversity of their workforce. Human resource policies underwent thorough overhauls, ensuring inclusivity in hiring practices and fostering environments where dialogue around discrimination and equity flowed openly. The mantra of equity, often overshadowed by solitary nods to diversity, now demanded space in boardroom agendas. Organizations realized that true transformation required uncomfortable conversations and tangible actions. Elliot, through workshops and seminars, disseminated the wisdom that equity involved not only the presence of diversity, but the celebration and empowerment of it. As policies began changing on paper, Elliot saw the need for more profound systemic change that took root in the very hearts of individuals. This was not simply about procedural shifts, but about reshaping perspectives so that future decisions, whether by a single person or a corporation, would naturally reflect the principles of fairness and justice. In the political arena, calls for legislative reforms grew louder. Fueled by advocacy and public pressure, efforts to combat racial profiling gained traction at both local and national levels. Elliot and Laurel, tireless in their commitment to driving change from the front lines, engaged with policymakers to push for robust protections against racial biases, ensuring that actions and reforms left institutions genuinely transformed. Their story, initially captured by smartphones and shared through social media, had become an emblem of unfaltering resolve against inequality. It transcended boundaries, gathering allies from disparate corners of the world who sought to contribute their unique strengths to the dialogue. The narrative took yet another transformative step when a documentary team approached Elliot and Laurel, proposing to capture their journey and the broader movement their story had sparked. Evolved from social media clips and news snippets, the feature-length documentary promised to delve deeper, portraying not only the confrontation and subsequent reform, but also the introspections, the struggles, and the extraordinary potential that lay in collective resilience. As the film premiered to an audience already familiar yet eager for nuanced insight, it reminded viewers that the victories against injustice are layered, that meaningful change often arises from the interplay of courage and critical discourse. The documentary resonated deeply, encouraging audiences to reflect, to engage, and to advocate. Through it all, Elliot and Laurel continued to focus on their personal journey, knowing their marriage was a mirror reflecting the larger symphony of change they orchestrated together. Their love was a reminder of the power inherent in unity and a testament that change, though daunting, could be approached with patience and persistence. In time, the story of Riverside Park transformed into more than an episode of singular redemption. It became a tale told and retold, inspiring hope, driving action, and fostering belief in a world defined by empathy and equality. This was not a story confined to its protagonists, but one in which every listener found a place, compelled to weave their stories into the grand narrative of change. And so, as Elliot and Laurel looked to a future bright with promise, they welcomed every subscriber and supporter, inviting them to share their thoughts and experiences. The call to action was clear. Hit that subscribe button to support this journey and share your thoughts to keep the dialogue alive. Together, they encouraged everyone to continue the conversation, championing a vision where justice was not just an aspiration, but a lived and shared reality.